It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and whatever other shiny objects happen to strike my fancy. Today, my special guest is Matt Manero, and we're going to be discussing his brand new book, You Need More Money. Wake up and solve your financial problems once and for all. Matt, thanks for joining us on today's show.
Shaun, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
First off, Matt, I'd love to hear a bit of your personal backstory, specifically with learning about money. For the things that have made you the most successful, were these things you learned from your parents, things you learned in school, or did most of your education come, say, through the school of hard knocks and learning from other peers and mentors along the way? Where did your financial education come from?
All of it comes from the school of hard knocks. I never had a mentor in my life. Didn't happen in school, didn't happen on the field, it didn't happen at home. Everything that I've learned is through my own exploration, and it has been a very difficult road, as it is for so many people. Most people suck at money, and for a lot of my 49 years on this planet, I did too. And then I made a conscious effort to change it. And in fact, not just change it, Shaun, but I wanted to destroy it. I wanted to blow it up. I wanted to never go back, and I was able to do that. And that was not done individually. I cannot take credit for that. I did it in conjunction with a team of wonderful people under my company, and we worked as an amazing team to get us all in a very strong financial position. And now I'm writing about it. I'm telling people literally the way I did it, the actual roadmap, the steps that I took to fix it.
Well, and that's what I think is really exciting about your book, because your journey is not uncommon. Most of us didn't learn about money from our parents. We didn't learn about it in elementary, middle school, or high school, or in college. And most of the things we learn about money, we learn when we're out in the world, working, doing our thing. So I think people are going to definitely be able to relate to that part of your story. But one of the things you open the book with, it's kind of stark, it's a reality check, is you share your brother-in-law's story. And I'd love for you to share a bit of that with us here on the podcast today, and why that really should be a wake-up call for all of us. Because I think his situation, a lot of people could find themselves in.
It's real life. The story of my brother-in-law, John, is the genesis of the book. I think it's important to preface it that my wife and I have been married 20 years. We got 3 amazing boys. I think we love each other deeply. And one thing I know for sure, Shaun, is that my wife loved her brother more than she loved me. And that is not discounting her love to me. It just is an example of how much her brother was the son for her. And he died 2 years ago at 46. He left a wife and 4 children with no health insurance, no life insurance, and $100 in the bank. And the book talks about, how does that happen? How does someone work as hard as he did for 25 years and basically, through a terrible piece of luck, be forced with the reality of having nothing? And then the second component of the book is the power of being able to drop in and remove that financial burden from him, because I did take care of my money situation, and what an incredible blessing that actually turned out to be. Unfortunately, he did die almost 1 year to the day, and he did leave his family with nothing. And I don't want that to happen to the millions and millions of people that are in the same situation. They just haven't been diagnosed with cancer. But financially, tens and tens of millions of people are woefully behind. It's an absolute epidemic in America, and most people don't spend any time thinking about it.
One of the challenges I think we face when we're thinking about our finances and how much money do we need to earn is we're often operating off of what you might call old financial milestones. And there are those classic books some of us are still reading about business and money, and even some of the more recent books, they're trying to get you excited about, say, maybe moving into 6 figures and earning $100,000 or even $1 million, but those numbers don't mean the same things that they used to. What does it look like in reality for us to be in, say, that top 1% of earners today? I don't think a lot of people realize how much has changed around us as we've been kind of head down doing our own thing.
Yeah, I talk about that as under the chapter being the money has moved. The question is, have you moved with it? The numbers are somewhat bleak. When I graduated college in 1991, to be in the top 1% of earners, you needed to earn $100,000 a year. That number today is $384,000. So to be in the top 1% of earners today, someone needs to earn $384,000. And when I ask that question to audiences you would be amazed at the answers I get. So I say, to be in the top 1% of earners today, what do you need? And people will say, $2 million, or they'll say 110,000, or some lunatic will say $1 billion. And it goes to show you that most people have absolutely no concept of what it takes to win at the game of money. And that number is a big number. $384,000 is a big number when the average family in America of four lives on $51,000. But who's helping us with the numbers? The first thing is to face the reality that we are financially behind. And that's perfectly okay. What's not okay is staying there. We've got to put a plan of action in place to fix the situation. Otherwise, we end up in a very bad situation. Time does not fix your money situation.
Another part of the book that I found particularly insightful, you talk about 3 different money mindsets, and I could see myself having each of these different mindsets at different points in our life. Tell us a bit about those 3 mindsets and which mindset is the one that we want to be striving for.
I'm a mindset guy, Shaun. My whole life is about mindset. It's basically about re-recording my tapes, because as a kid, my adopted dad called me stupid and idiot and moron my entire upbringing. And so my tapes about myself were recorded wrong. In essence, my mindset was wrong. And so in the book, I try to address mindset in 3 categories. We have the blamers, we have the dreamers, and we have the game facers. The blamers are the people that we all know, the ones that blame who's in the White House, or they blame the economy, or they blame regulation or such and such for their money woes. The dreamers are really amazing people. They're the people that we actually like to hang out with at the cocktail parties. They're our funny college buddies and stuff, but they're the ones that say, when I win the lottery, and then everybody laughs. And the problem is with dreaming, nobody ever takes action. And so they end up their whole life just dreaming about what they're going to get, and they never get it. And then there's the game facers, which are guys like me who just make a plan. We draw the line in the sand, and we say we will climb the hill regardless of the obstacles that we face. And I believe there is only one mindset that works with fixing a money situation, and that is the game facer, which we leave nothing to chance. We do our research and analysis. We build a network of people around us who can help us, and we literally find the platform in which our superpower is connected to earning. So many people want to make more money, but they're actually in just a horrible platform to do so. It's a big deal.
I absolutely love that you have readers taking action steps throughout the book. And the first major task you have as complete is creating a lifestyle by design. While many books have you do similar things, they're often having you make, say, a dream board and thinking about the shiny objects you want to have and maybe some of the experiences that you want to have. But a lot of them don't go to that next level. And that's one of the things you're having us do that's really important, is you're encouraging us to define our core values. Would love to have you just comment a bit about how going through this process and being very thorough and specific, especially in this step, is one of the things that's really going to set us up for a higher likelihood of success.
I think everyone has to make a simple decision of what do they stand for. And what I mean by that is literally, what do you tolerate and what don't you tolerate? What will you let in and what will you repel? And I refer to that as core values. My number one core value is to be a better father to my 3 boys than my father was to me. And that dictates a lot of things in my life. What do I mean by that? It means that if my boys have a game and they want me at the game, guess what? I'm going to the game. If they want to go on the boat and water ski, I'm going to make time for that. Those are examples of a core value that has been defined and implemented and worked on. And I believe most people are very weak in their core value creation. They don't know what they stand for. Another core value, I have so many core values in my business and in my personal life, but I believe that people that come in contact with me and that I'm grateful enough to come into contact with them should be given a little shot in the arm that says they have a better opportunity to reach their God-given potential after they've hung out with me. It's a core value of mine. I want to build people up. I want to help people see bigger in the future and that they're capable of more. And so my experiences with people, I don't commiserate about bad news or problems. I commiserate about what's your bottleneck and how can I possibly help you get closer to reaching your God-given potential. And so with clarity of core values comes peace. And with peace comes energy and focus and power and passion. And so many of us, when it comes to our lives and our money, we live in chaos. And the chaos is caused because we don't know what the heck we stand for. And so I ask people in the book, take the time to create your core values. What are 3, 4, 5 things that you absolutely are non-negotiable about? And then build your life around those core values. I have done that. I've been on both sides of the fence, Shaun. And after the creation of the core values and then putting the Doorman Principle, which we talk about, that's how you protect your core values, man, my life got so much better.
I think the Doorman Principle is one of the most critical parts that you have people consider there, because most people are just driven by everything that's coming at them and just trying to respond, and always in a reactive mode. And by putting that gatekeeper there, you're able to put yourself in a position to be proactive and focus on the things that you need to be working on rather than being driven by everything that's just constantly bombarding you.
Yes, I think it's a very vital component to the protection of your core values. So I talk about this in the book, and people may question me on this, but it's 100% true. I get hit up for lunch appointments every day. Someone calls me or emails me and says, hey, I'd like to go to lunch. And my response is always the same. Why? Because it's my doorman protecting my core values. I don't do lunch. I'm not interested in going to lunch with you to figure out after an hour or two of drive time and ordering food and sitting around and saying niceties back and forth. I'm not interested to find out that you don't fit my core values. So I'm happy to have a 10-minute conversation with anybody, and I have them a lot. People come to my office all the time for that 10-minute conversation, and it protects my time. No lunch with people that don't produce me value or I'm unsure if they produce me value is a protection of my core value, which is time. And so people need to have a buffer, a filter. I call it the doorman. My buddy Rick Sapio calls it the doorman. He's the one who taught me it. And it has to be in front of all of your core values. Otherwise, you end up doing so much low-value activity, and the doorman allows you to do high-value activities. And high-value activities are the only way that you skip rungs on the ladder of success, Shaun. And people are making these small incremental moves. Look, I love Dave Ramsey, and I think he's done an incredible service to the globe for a matter when it comes to money. But his stuff is outdated. It doesn't matter that you have $1,000 in your emergency fund. In the big scheme of things, because the money's moved, your $1,000 emergency fund or whatever he calls it, your baby money fund, is just that. It's baby money. It doesn't mean anything. People need to move bigger. They need to go 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, a million. And I know those things sound crazy, but I'm telling you, if people follow my roadmap, they will get there. Just like I did, man. I started from zero. Not a nickel in my pocket, Shaun. I started from zero.
You brought up the roadmap, so let's jump to that for a little bit. So the last 2/3 of your book, you've got us going on building out the roadmap that's going to help us to get to that point where we're moving towards and living out our lifestyle by design, if you will. Give us a high-level flyover of some of the key steps we're going to be taking there.
So the first thing we have to do is we've got to figure out, where are we? We have to take the litmus test. Literally, where are we? And I give definitions. Here's the thing that I think so many of us struggle. Shaun, I believe we are hill climbers. I believe that most people have some ambition and they actually want to achieve. But we don't know how high the hill should be. And so we end up climbing these very small hills and they don't really move the needle of our net worth. So the first thing we had to do, what I had to do in the book, was create numbers for people. Well, what is a milestone? And so I broke it down into 3 phases. The first phase of wealth is broke. The second is in accumulation, and the third is rich. Broke is if you have less than $50,000 liquid cash. Some might consider that a low number. My really rich friends think that's a silly low number. And some of my friends who are really struggling think that's an impossible number, but it's a real number. You're broke if you don't have $50,000 liquid. Why 50,000? Because it's pretty much 6 months of just about anybody's living situation, right? Guys living up, making 5, 6, 7 grand a month, that's what he needs to live. 6 months got him covered at 50,000. And then once we get out of broke, we get into the most difficult situation, or the most difficult phase, which is called accumulation mode, in which the person needs to be stacking and racking cash. Because all of the investment deals that I've done through building my network, which is a connection to the roadmap process, the initial investment is $100,000. And so when you're in accumulation mode, we need to get to $100,000 as quickly as possible, because every real estate deal or private equity deal or investment deal or limited partnership deal that I'm involved in they all start with a minimum investment of 100 grand. So we've got to get some money accumulated to be able to deploy it and allow money to work for us and make us more money. And so I start in that roadmap process to give people real numbers of what they need to achieve. And it's very fascinating to me. I just did a Facebook Live on this last night, Shaun. One of my richest friends, he runs a $3 billion private equity fund, read my book last Thursday, and he called me yesterday and said, I don't need more money, but I read your book and it fueled me to get connected to my potential again. And in the last 7 days, I have created $1 billion worth of new opportunities for me, and it is completely connected to me reading your book last Thursday. My point is, the book isn't just for people who are broke. The book is for anyone who feels as though they've fallen into a little bit of complacency. They've sort of started saying to themselves, well, I'm good. The bills don't come on pink slips anymore. We can go to the Disney World vacation. We've got 2 nice cars. That falls into what I call false positive. It's the most dangerous trap anybody who's got a few bucks can fall into. That says, well, just because we're not broke anymore, we're good. That's accumulation mode.
So we get our lifestyle by design written out, we've got our roadmap written out, and we've set some goals. What are some ways that people can keep these things in front of themselves, keep it front and center, say on a daily basis? What are some of the ways that you do that?
Money wants to be submissive. It literally, like an old dog, money wants to roll over and have its belly petted, and it wants to be submissive to its owner. And when we look at it in that situation, think of how many people are in the exact opposite situation. They're being bit by money every single day. The dog is not submissive. The dog is actually the master. And so the way you fix that is through massive amounts of focus on your money. So we need to do a budget. We need to figure out how much money do we actually need. We need to double check our platform. Are we in a platform that can actually make us the amount of money that we need to live our lifestyle by design? So little tips, tricks. I literally laminate. I keep it in my wallet. If you and I were together, I'd pull my wallet out and I'd show you. On one side of this small little laminate, about the size of a business card, I have my core values. And on the other side, I have my money goals. And I look at it every single day. It's in my car. It's on the mirror in my bathroom when I shave. I'm looking at my financial goals. I print a personal financial statement each and every month. I go in and I update my personal financial statement. My controller in my business, every single week, every Friday at 3 o'clock on my desk, I will have my profit and loss and my balance sheet of my business. Every week, I'm looking at my money situation. And when we look at it with that, when we put the focus on it, we learn over a relatively short period of time, the money just starts to roll over. And we actually start to control it now. And then eventually it becomes totally submissive, and we begin to deploy money and tell it where it's going to live and what it's going to do. And it's incredibly powerful when a person takes control of their money situation. And my story, Shaun, does not come from some book. It comes from real life. A school of hard knocks. This is how I had to do it, and I think anybody can do it. I mean it with 100% certainty. If I did it, anybody can do it.
Matt, when you think of, say, readers getting to that last page of the book, what's the big idea that you hope each and every reader takes away after engaging with You Need More Money?
That's a great question. Here's the biggest thing. Number one, they should be a little bit scared. And it's the hardest part about my book. I'm not trying to put fear into people. I'm not trying to scare people. That wasn't my intention. My intention of the book was to try to actually give people steps and the roadmap. But in order to get there, I had to wake them up. And so the first part of the book should be a wake-up call that really puts everything into check. And I hope that it does that for a lot of people. But when you do it with money, it's usually pretty scary. But then I hope that they recognize that there are steps to winning at the game. I give them the steps, the real steps that I took. And then I think the last takeaway that I think is really important is that people should understand that money matters because there are so many things that we can't control. My brother-in-law had no control over that cancer. He thought he was going to the doctor to get a shot, and that he was going to go back to work the next day, and he was admitted to the emergency room. I'll give you another perfect example. It happened literally just this morning. My mother-in-law, who I love dearly, has no money. She has Social Security benefit, I think, around $1,400 a month. And that's all she has to live on. She has no savings, nothing. She doesn't live in a house that she owns. She has no equity in a house, nothing. That's literally what she lives on. Well, she has a car that the air conditioning is out in her car. So my mother-in-law doesn't have $1,000 to get it fixed, so I take her car to my office yesterday. Now, I don't drive my mother-in-law's car. I don't even really look at my mother-in-law's car. And I drove that car to get it worked on at the mechanic by my office. And I said, this is ridiculous. My mother-in-law can't drive this car. It's 13 years old. It's a little Hyundai. It's got a broken air conditioner. The whole car's only worth $3,000. And so, by the way, I also can't have my kids riding in this car if she's got to go pick my kids up from school or something like that. This thing is a rat trap. It's dangerous almost. So I said, to hell with it. I said, I'm not getting her car fixed. I'm going to just buy her a new car. And they just delivered her new car to my office just before I jumped on the call with you. $23,000, no financing, didn't run it through my company. I stroked a check for it, and I will drive my mother-in-law's brand new car home to her this afternoon in her name, not in my name, no debt service against it. And it will be an incredibly powerful moment for me this afternoon that is totally derived from money. If there's no money, if I don't have any money and she doesn't have any money, how does her car air conditioning get fixed? I live in Texas. It's 105 in the summer. Am I going to have my 73-year-old mother-in-law, who I love dearly, who's a major part of my life, driving around in 105-degree weather? It's never going to happen. Money fixes the problem.
That's a powerful story and a powerful example of why it's important to read your book and put these principles into place. I've talked to hundreds of authors. I work in the publishing industry, and so I'm always curious, working out a message to put it in a book and share that with the public. You're often forced to live out a message in a new way, or you're kind of put in a position to live what you're doing more publicly. So I'm curious for you, what's the number one thing you either learned in the process of putting this book together, or maybe the biggest change you've made in your own life after writing this book?
Look, I went into the book thing, as I have sort of gone into the social media thing, with really one desired outcome, which was enjoyment. To enjoy the process, to enjoy the fortunateness of meeting amazing, wonderful people like yourself and so many other people that I've met along the process. You know, I think a takeaway for so many people is to just enjoy the process, because when you write a book, it's difficult, it's hard, but if you're having fun along the way, it does make it a little bit easier. But the other piece of the puzzle is you don't sell a lot of copies of a book without a little bit of luck. I mean, it's one of those things, I think, where, look, unless you want to travel around the country and talk to every Kiwanis club in America and then hawk $20 books in the back of the room, which is a really lousy trade, because if you're selling a $20 book and it costs you $800 between flight, car rental, and hotel to go to the event, it's a pretty bad trade, right? So there has to be something more than book sales in the process. And for me, it was, can I meet lovely, exciting, wonderful people, and can I enjoy the process? And I can tell you that I have been blown away with that as the desire. I have met the most wonderful people through it. Just amazing, amazing people. And I think it's a takeaway for your audience today. Never give up on the goodness of people. And also, here's another thing that I realized too, Shaun, that some of the richest people that I met along this process, they're not what we as poor people think they are. They're not money grubbers. They're not like only interested in the dollar. The common trait they all have is that they help a lot of people. And like Zig Ziglar used to say, right, if you help enough people get what they want, they will help you get what you want. I'm telling you, it's true. People want to help people. Don't believe that millennials are bad or certain types of people because of their economic influence are bad. It's just not true, man. There's a lot of wonderful, amazing people out there with or without money.
I couldn't agree more. That's very, very true. Well, as we begin to wrap up here, I wouldn't be doing a service to my listeners if I didn't ask you about your podcast. So tell us a little bit about your podcast, how that got started, and who are some of the types of guests and messages they're going to be able to listen to there.
This week, we just recorded episode 100. And we've had some amazing guests on it, from guys like Grant Cardone to Tim Story to Hector Lamarck to Ed Milet, and then some outliers like yesterday's podcast that we released was with Annie Duke, probably the most successful female poker player in the history of poker. I have people that interest me on my podcast. And we do talk about money because I think it's a requirement of the audience. They're listening for money tips. But a lot of the podcast is also just my business experience, all of the good and the bad that I've seen through business. There's never a question off limits for me ever, which I think is another byproduct, Shaun, of this process, is the importance of total transparency. Like when people come to my podcast, they'll send me a list of questions and things like that they'd like to ask or topics they want to talk about. I never do that. I never reverse that. If someone says, what are topics that you don't want to talk about? The answer is nothing. I'll talk about anything you want to talk about. You want to talk about my marriage? You want to talk about my money situation? You want to talk about all the people that I treated poorly in business, all the people I've treated well, the lousy hires, the great hire, anything. I talk about anything. And that total transparency is what I think people get on my podcast. It's just me in my studio. I think it's a great podcast. I really do. It's a great podcast. Thank you for bringing it up. I think it's just a great podcast.
Matt, if people want to connect with you, find out more about your book and your podcast, where are some of the places they can find you on the web?
It's Matt Manero, anywhere on social. Just type in Matt Manero on Google, then go to mattmanero.com. Just type in my name on any of those platforms, and something will pop up that will lead you down the trail to be able to learn more. And I'm grateful for being on your podcast, Shaun. Thank you for reaching out and asking me. I love talking about the book. I love talking about business and human nature. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Oh, it's definitely my pleasure. And like we do with every episode, once you're done listening, just head on over to ShaunTabatt.com. We'll have detailed links in the show notes, places where you can connect with Matt, places where you can pick up his book, and also subscribe to his podcast. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Matt Manero. Once again, our book today was You Need More Money. Wake up and solve your financial problems once and for all. Again, if you want to connect with Matt, find out more about this helpful new book, be sure to check out his website at mattmanero.com. And Matt, I just want to say thanks so much for sharing with us today. It's been a great pleasure and an honor to speak with you.
Thank you, Shaun. It's absolutely my pleasure.